In this first video, we'll learn how to use the Modo bakers that have been added in MARI 3. Alright, great. So I've got a little bit of a slimmed down version of our Assassin project, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit as we kind of progress through this video. But you've heard me talk at numerous occasions throughout this course about ambient occlusion. Now, again, MARI has the ability to calculate ambient occlusion for the purpose of viewing the project on the canvas. And you can do that in the Objects menu by simply clicking this ambient occlusion option. Now, if we were to do that, we could come over here to our shader and then begin to adjust the ambient occlusion settings built into the shader right here. So that is, for this asset, really not a good solution because this is, again, a fairly complex asset. And in the long run, that ambient occlusion calculation is really wasted because we can't get it out of MARI. Well, now inside of MARI 3, we have the Modo bakers that have been included as part of MARI. So what this gives us the freedom to do for our assets like this one is we can bake production quality maps like ambient occlusion out when we're creating the rest of our textures. And let's go ahead and show you how that works. I'm going to come up here and just right click on my toolbars, and we're going to open up the Modo Render palette. Now, the Modo Render palette's got 3 tabs up here at the top, and you'll see the first one that's active here is for rendering. We're not going to look at that in this video, but in the next video we will. Let's come over here to the Bake tab. Now, again, I mentioned to you that I had sort of slimmed down this asset and removed quite a bit of the geometry, and I did that for the purpose of showing you how this baking works with this asset in this video. When you're working with baking, the size of a mesh, the number of polygons in a mesh, have a direct impact on the length of time it takes to bake certain types of things. So for the purpose of this video, I've eliminated several pieces of this mesh just so I can show you how this works. Now, I did not include this particular version of the asset in the project files, but feel free to open the Assassin Final and explore the baking features in MARI using that particular asset. So the way this is going to work is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose a bake preset. Now, you'll notice here, as soon as we do, MARI's going to look like it locks up. It's going to become what appears to be unresponsive. Now, what MARI is actually trying to do is it's trying to fulfill the request of this preview area. So let me go ahead and show you that here. I'm going to just jump in. You'll see that there are a number of different bake presets included here inside the Bake tab. And I would expect more to be added as time passes. So we'll go ahead and select AO, which is our ambient occlusion. And you'll see here that MARI is appearing to not do anything. In fact, it's going to this little blue spinning wheel. And that's okay, because I know from experience and behind the scenes, MARI is actually doing a preview of this ambient occlusion so that we can see what this looks like right here in the preview window. And there we go. I went ahead and paused the video while that was happening, and you can see our preview is coming to life here. Now, this is a live preview of what we're seeing in this little pane right here. So what we can actually come in here and do is we can actually begin to orbit around our mesh. If we wanted to orbit around and maybe zoom in on maybe a portion of it, we'll go in and zoom in like that. And what we should see is eventually this preview will actually update and show us what the ambient occlusion is looking like based on our navigation and our zooming here inside of MARI's canvas. So if we wanted to preview the ambient occlusion and the settings that we have for it, we can absolutely do that just simply by navigating the canvas here and then waiting for our preview to update. I'm going to zoom in on these laces right here so we can kind of see what that ambient occlusion looks like. And we'll just wait for the preview to update one more time. All right, great. So you can see right out of the box with the default settings, this AO Baker is doing a marvelous job. We're getting some really nice ambient occlusion here. And this is going to be production quality. This is going to be baked into a map, something we can actually get out of MARI. Now, we do have the ability to come in here into this settings portion of the baking tab and come in and change some different settings for this, like the number of occlusion rays, occlusion distance, spread angle. So what I've found, though, is for my purposes, most of the time the default settings have worked pretty darn well. So go ahead and give those a shot, and if you need to begin adjusting things, feel free to. So the next step is we need to go ahead and tell MARI to bake this ambient occlusion. Let's say we're happy with it. We want to bake it. So we need to come over here and specify what resolution of a map we want MARI to bake for us. Now I know that I have my patches for this project set to 2K. For this particular video, I'm just going to leave this set to 1K, but you can see here we can come in and choose some really interesting resolutions, anywhere from very, very tiny all the way up to extremely large. So MARI has that capability. And then, of course, we have our bake depth, and we can choose 8-bit, 16-bit, or 32-bit for our ambient occlusion. So the last thing that's set to do here is to go ahead and hit this bake button. I'll go ahead and do that, and I want to pause the video while MARI is doing this. All right, now MARI is still baking out my ambient occlusion map. I'm going to go ahead and unpause the video because I wanted to point something out to you. If you ever wonder if anything's actually happening and MARI is still working, you can always keep an eye right down here on the status bar at the very bottom of the user interface. You can see what the action is that MARI's doing, and you can see exactly how far it is in that process. So you can see right now I'm 57% of the way to actually having my texture bake complete. I'll dialog come up that actually will show the importing of images. So basically what MARI's doing is it's finished baking the ambient occlusion map, and then it's importing all of those various images onto the respective patches inside of our UV layout here. So now that MARI has completed that bake, let me show you what it's done. So you can see my UV layout looks drastically different with significantly less pieces of geometry inside of it. But over here inside my channels, you can see here that I have now a new channel. I have an AO channel. Let's come over here and just look at the contents of that channel only. And once we do, you can see here, once we zoom in, this is the actual bandana right up here. Let's see if I can get that down. There we go. And you can see there is the ambient occlusion map that we just asked MARI to bake. We could come over here and look at it in the orthographic view as well, using flat lighting. And you can see there is a very nice 1K ambient occlusion map. So I found that this is actually something that produces really outstanding results. So I've used this on several projects and really enjoy this addition to MARI 3. So in this video, we've learned how to use MARI's bakers. Actually, I say MARI, they are actually Modo's bakers that have been included here inside of MARI 3.